Hey, what's up, everybody? It's BDF44. Okay, so now I can come to you guys with proper experience on the video that I just watched. I wanted to talk on this, but I hadn't seen the clip. Stephen A. Smith was reporting on Brooklyn Nets hiring Steve Nash, two-time MVP, or three-time. I think it's two-time MVP. Fantastic passer, one of the greatest passers of all time, one of the greatest locker room players, leaders that you'll ever find. Spent some time as a aging player for the Lakers. Didn't really get to do much, but we did have him around the facility and getting to know some of our young players, that kind of thing. It was really a good experience to have Steve Nash around, even though it was under some very bad circumstances, be it how we acquired him, giving away so many draft picks and things of that nature. But having him here was not a bad thing at all. He seemed like a great guy. Kobe loved him, that kind of thing. So the young players loved him, and Steve Nash is a true legend out here, and I like him a whole lot. So I listened to Stephen A. say what he had to say about the hiring, and he qualified himself by saying, first of all, he thinks Steve Nash is a great human being, has done a lot for African Americans, American players, and things of that nature. And he thinks he's going to do a really good job. So he qualified himself by saying that he threw this disclaimer more or less out there before saying something that's going to offend a lot of people. And I listened to him. I heard him out. Stephen A. Smith's situation is really unique as an African American because he is pissed off the African American community so much with his various takes. Prioritizing jobs over mental health in some cases. And I say that by saying he would tell guys, for example, don't smoke weed, put down the weed for the sake of your contract. Don't do it. And sometimes a lot of guys, they need their weed for their mental health to keep their stability. I think he puts a priority. He's a capitalist, a self-proclaimed capitalist, and he puts an emphasis on the opportunities of being able to take on positions. He sees himself and sees African Americans at a place of disadvantage. From my perspective, this is what I've seen out of Stephen A. It doesn't look like he has a whole lot of faith in African Americans owning their own stuff and succeeding in a white man's market. He feels, and I've seen this just through some of the things that he's done, staying with ESPN for so long, when just a little bit of belief in yourself and being able to kind of make the right friends and putting yourself in a position to start your own platform, I think would have been better for Stephen A. I think being that he's been the number one selling point on ESPN, he could have taken his talent, grabbed a few people that he knows, and started their own thing about 10 years ago, and it would be probably a $100 million company right now. So I've always felt, and I've said this about Stephen A. Smith, I've always felt he didn't have a whole lot of faith in the African American community as it pertained to us being able to rise without the assistance of white America. And everything that he opens his mouth to say in regards to criticizing African Americans has been from a standpoint of you're screwing up the money, you're screwing up the job, you're screwing up your opportunities, and we don't get a lot of those. That's always his position. And he prioritizes money over a lot of things. Money, when he starts talking about basketball things, it's dollars first. When he starts talking about your responsibilities, it's your responsibility to your employer. It's like that mentality to be the best worker possible as opposed to just getting what's right even when you don't have leverage, which is where the world is trying to get to. I think the world is screaming out, for the most part, we are trying to evolve to a place where we do things for others without something needed in return. We want you to care about stuff that doesn't pertain to yourself, not because you can get anything back for it, but just because it's decent to do. And there's still a great facet of humanity that doesn't want to do that, doesn't believe in that. Stephen A. Smith has found himself in a world where he has said a lot of things catering to trying to lead black men into fitting into white man's world, while Black America has more or less said we want to be able to live independently without them, or as competition to it, and that's the disconnect for me watching Stephen A. Smith. When he thinks he's leading brothers the right way, he's showing us how to be the best employees. He's showing us how to be the best uh, person to assimilate ourselves into white America. And I just don't think that's what the people want. I think that situation with Kaepernick, him coming out completely opposing Kaepernick with his inside information, his inside positioning, knowing what was going on behind the scenes, probably having privy to some stuff that we didn't know about Kaepernick's situation. I think the position that he took was so anti-Kaepernick that I think it turned a lot of the black community who was already off on Stephen A. Smith because they didn't understand what I just articulated about his mentality. They looked at it as him being a coon or somebody who doesn't want to see black people succeed. I never understood that to be the case. I just felt like he thought of it as a means of leading us in the direction that he thought was right. He felt that what he was doing was the best way for us to go, and for a lot of people it may be. But I think what I've said all this to say is I think he's done a great deal of trying to make up for that Kaepernick situation. I think he really does legitimately care about the African American community. I just think he feels like the best way to salvation is a different way than a lot of us believe we should be going. And a lot of times when he was displaying and saying certain things, he was practicing what he's preaching, which is being a good employee, making sure he holds back on certain topics, making sure he sides with his employers, siding with people who would otherwise be the majority in the situation, and sometimes making himself look like somebody who's against African Americans in certain cases. But the majority of the time when he pisses black people off, it's usually because he's putting a dollar amount or the responsibility of being an employee over other aspects of our living. And that is something that most of us don't appreciate. We don't like it. That's something the black community just does not like coming from a black person, especially a black person calls himself a capitalist but doesn't want to own his own platform. For a lot of us who think a certain way, a lot of people who are very, very intelligent, who look at things from a I want to own it standpoint, we have no idea where that comes from. That doesn't make any sense. You can't tell me that you're a capitalist and then tell me you want to be an employee and want to lead your brothers and your sisters how to be the best employees under white America. That doesn't add up. And it looks coonish. It looks like you don't love us. It looks like you love the money more than you love us, you love yourself, etc. I just understood Stephen A. Smith to have a different way of seeing how a black man's supposed to succeed. So anyway, as I talk in circles, today it seems like he was trying to make up for that. He was trying to get in good with the black community, better with the black community, trying to make up for some of those things. And people have been calling him coons for years. People have been talking crazy about him for years because of some of the displays that he's shown in being a good employee for ESPN. Sometimes he may have to say some things that didn't fit the black community. A lot of times, especially when he was talking about the NFL and football, he needed to take some positions that would otherwise please the majority, just to please his employer. And I understood that. Didn't love it, but what choice did he have in his mind? And said that's what it comes down to. So when he uttered what he said today, and I saw it, the quote, I knew exactly what it was. This is him overreacting based on previous disapproval of the African American community. So in his mind, he's speaking out for us in a way that we would appreciate. But what he doesn't understand is, just like most of the time, he doesn't understand what we want. The things that he wants and the ways that he sees himself succeeding and the way he wants to lead his brothers is literally the complete opposite of what the consensus is in our community. I don't think most African Americans looked at this Steve Nash hire and were offended by it and felt that it was important that Stephen A. speak out about it. Okay? If anything, most of us just looked at that and said, see, here we go again, same old stuff. But it didn't need an especially serious Stephen A. Smith. Because we, African Americans right now, we have our eyes on bigger fish. And anything that takes away from the bigger fish conversation is probably counterproductive in one way or another. Did he point out a form of injustice? If you look at the details, even that part is actually arguable. But if for the sake of the conversation, let's just assume The answer is yes, so we can put it aside. Okay, he had a legitimate right. Some may agree. Did it need to be said by you? No, Stephen. Did it need to be said by you today? No, Stephen. Why? Because we are already fighting with a lot of misdirection coming from the opposite side. We know what presses their buttons. They hate when you point out systematic racism. They hate when you point out individual racism. They hate when you pull out the fact that you're African American and may have been treated some kind of way. This isn't 2 years ago. We are literally putting Black Lives Matter on basketball floors for everybody to interpret however they are interpreting it. And obviously, there's a good portion of people who are not interpreting it in a way that is positive, in a way that makes them care more. So when you understand that, and you're dealing with murder, injustice in that regard, and things of that nature, when we start talking about NBA players getting head and NBA coaches getting passed over for head coaching jobs, and you want to call out what they would consider the race card for that in this era, it just seems like low-hanging fruit. It feels like one of those situations where you crying wolf and you oversaturate the entire process with little bitty things that are otherwise just going to piss people off rather than make them care, and most importantly turn their eyes away from things that are really, really big fish in our minds. Murders and things of that nature that really, really, really need attention. So while maybe 2 years ago he sits on First Take and calls this white privilege, it may only get 2,000 dislikes. Today, when everybody is up in arms about various things racially, and people are really, really tired of being told how racist they are, or told how much other people matter and feeling like they don't, it's not the time to point out a hangnail. We're talking about gunshot wounds. You're pointing out a hangnail, bro. You're watering us down. Not single-handedly, but you catering to the watering down process of people not taking us seriously by pointing out a millionaire who didn't get a job over another millionaire when we got people getting shot in the back. You know what I mean? It's like we already pouring this down people's throats. Okay? They already telling us they don't give one care. They're already telling you they tired of hearing it. They're already telling you that they're not going to change. And you're going to pick low-hanging fruit on top of it to throw in their faces? Do we have a gripe? Maybe. Should he have said it today? I don't think it helped. I don't think it helped. I think that's the moral of what I'm trying to say. I don't think it helped. Because I've seen guys who happen to be black who gotten head coaching jobs when they weren't necessarily qualified. Just like I've seen Steve Kerr do it. If we're talking about the specifics of the candidates in which he mentioned some, you mentioned Mark Jackson. He mentioned Ty Lue. Now, Foom's going to get another job at the same time. The same time that news came out about the Nets, Ty Lue came out about Philly. So Ty's likely going to be in Philly today. He's probably signing as we speak. So it's like, with all that going on, it just feels like Mark Jackson getting overlooked for the 708th time for a coaching job just doesn't need to be the thing that we point out as white privilege in 2020. I'm sorry. It just doesn't need to be highlighted, especially, in my opinion. Not today. Not in this climate. And especially when you're doing it to somebody that we all like a lot. Someone who has put in a certain level of equity with our community. Someone who is a friend of the community to a degree, only to a degree because I really don't know. But the energy is, yeah, Steve Nash was a dope guy, man. We like Steve Nash a lot. We all like Steve Nash a lot. So if you're going to point out an injustice in a situation like this, I think it would benefit much more if you didn't point it out in regards to somebody a lot of us are rooting for. And it does not help in the specifics of the conversation if the two stars of the Brooklyn Nets have handpicked this guy. And they happen to be black. And they happen to be two of the best players ever played the game, in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. If they wanted Steve Nash, the end. Because what you're saying is They should overlook the coach they want to hire somebody they may not necessarily want just because he's black. And what our community is saying is, that's not what we want. We don't want that. We want to be given an opportunity. We don't want to necessarily remove opportunities from others. You understand? In other words, we want a fair shot. We don't want a free shot. We want a fair shot. In response to privilege, we don't want privilege. We want parity. You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. And that's what everybody I'm talking to is saying. I'm not trying to take a job from a white guy. I just don't want a white guy to be able to take a job from me. If I'm qualified and he's qualified, then let them choose the guy they want. Not pick me because I'm black or pick him because he's white. That's what we want. I think that's what a lot of people want at this point. I think that's what the majority of people who are out here saying whatever we're saying ultimately want to get to a point where that is the case. Because you don't replace poor treatment with the same treatment pointed at the opposite direction. That's not a solution. That's tit for tat. That's, you did something wrong, so let me do something wrong in response to it. We're not asking for more wrong. We're asking for solutions to a long-standing problem, which is systematic racism. You don't respond to that by doing the exact same thing to the opposite party. It just, you're not helping your cause. And I think Stephen A. Smith is not really asking for anything. He's just pointing out a circumstance that looks like what he would consider white privilege, just so he can get back in good graces with us, African Americans, because he's done such a poor job of ingratiating himself with us in matters that matter to us, because he prioritizes money over some of the things that we prioritize in this life, like safety and peace of mind and belief in oneself and shit like that. But that's what happens when you prioritize money. You're going to always be out of touch. And that is the moral of the story. As much as I like Stephen A. Smith and I love the direction that he's taken in terms of being able to stick it out and make a successful life for himself, at the end of the day, he's led his people the wrong way because he never put faith first. Faith was never the conversation first for a guy like Stephen A. And if you know anything about black Americans, we are a faith-based people. We are not a money people. We are a love people. We believe in ourselves. We want to believe in ourselves. We persevered when we had little to nothing. We've never needed everything. We've only needed a little. The things that matter to us: wisdom, respect, love, support, togetherness, culture. Money is somewhere down the list for the majority of us. Those who prioritize money first are usually out of touch with the rest of the team, with the rest of the people, and that's exactly how I see Stephen A. Heart in the right place, mind completely misled down the wrong path of prioritizing money over spiritual and mental equity. See, I was fortunate enough to be raised by somebody who allowed me to understand that having money is a wonderful thing, but if you don't have peace of mind, you don't have belief in yourself, you don't have the strength and the support of your people, you are still out here by yourself. You can put yourself in a position to be the best employee. You can put yourself in a position to have the best job. You can put yourself in a position to have a voice that's loud as hell. But you're going to say the wrong things. You're going to rub people the wrong way. And both sides are not going to respect you. And that's exactly what's happened to Stephen A. Smith. Black people mad at him because we still mad at him for cap and any other that other stuff that look like cooning to us. White people mad at him because it looks like he's trying too hard to distance himself from the position that he already took, which was, I'm rolling with y'all. And the black folks, they get in where they fit in. The black community's respect meant more to him than he probably initially thought when he was climbing, trying to get to where he is now. And I think black people have done more than he probably thought they would have over the last 20 or so years while he was rising. I don't think he thought that we would have LeBron Jameses and people like that with this type of power, who have made it so that, you know what, it ain't a shot in the dark having faith in a black businessman, because a black businessman has been able to grow so much so soon. You know what I mean? And suddenly having more faith in us as a people probably seems like a better investment than maybe it did when he was developing who he's become. And I think, just in general, man, watching Stephen A. Smith, I never thought that he was somebody who really didn't care about black people. I never thought that. I never believed that he wasn't a brother. I never looked at him and said, that's an all the way coon. Never felt that way. I just felt he was misguided. Now, when you say misguided, you have to preface this by saying whoever, quote unquote, misguided him was trying to lead his life in a direction that would be supremely successful, but with little to no risk as possible in terms of building your own platform, which I think he would have done phenomenal with, built on his back. When you think about the hours at ESPN be working Stephen A. Smith, and I've talked about this already, I'm speaking in circles, I'm sorry, I have a history of doing that, but it does make sense when you add it up. He has had so many hours put in with ESPN. If he would have put all of those hours, those man hours on this show, on a radio show, and Cold Pizza all the way through First Take and everything else that he's done with them, Sports Center included, if he'd put them same hours into his own platform, my God, the man would be a billionaire. He wouldn't be sitting up here waiting for $50 million checks, $100 million checks, or whatever they're paying him. He would be writing those checks for other talent. And that's the type of thing that I feel like guys who have super talent, that's why I respect Joe Budden so much, because he's trying to go for his own. He's not interested in just being an employee forever. And when you have that kind of talent, that's the example you want to show your people. Not how to be a good employee and how to keep their job for 40 years while they're overworked and underpaid. You want to show them how to maneuver through the ecosystem that's set up for them to fail, not how to dodge contact, not how to avoid contact. And I think that's the position that Stephen A. is trying to teach a lot of his people, is to avoid contact, for proverbially. You know what I mean? Like literally try to take the most safe route possible to get what it is that you want, and you'll have to behave the right way the whole time, and if you do all of that, they'll give you your portion. That was never the black man's purpose. That was never our mission. That was never how we were supposed to be. That ain't what comes naturally to us, especially black Americans. That's just not who we are. So I just, that's the disconnect, man. That's truly how I've seen Stephen A. Smith. I think he was pointing out, like I said, does he have a gripe? To a degree. Because Steve Nash doesn't have any experience coaching, and he did inherit the most coveted position in the sport. So yes, he does have a gripe saying that Steve Nash got the job for reasons that may not necessarily fit his resume. To say it's white privilege, just don't sit right. I'm not gonna lie to you. And you know me, if you watch me, you know I don't have no problem pointing out stuff like that. I have no problem pointing out stuff like that. But he gave me like 4 candidates that were passed on, like 4 names. And then they gave me Steve Nash, and they explained to me that KD and Kyrie want this guy. So I'm like, it's not like there's 70 names on the list that they overlooked. Those are 4 guys that could have very well gotten overlooked by our rookie coach organically. They may come to the same conclusion and still hire this guy after they did their due diligence with the other coaches who happen to be black. I just don't, in my heart and gut, feel like this is them snubbing black coaches. I think this is them getting the guy that they wanted, and Kyrie and KD wanted this guy. A lot of my argument, and you'll see this on my Eastern Conference breakdown of round 2, I was touching in on this. A lot of my thing was, if Kyrie and KD weren't involved in this picking, I think this was a very, very dangerous pick for the Brooklyn Nets, and I have no idea why they wouldn't want their superstars involved in this position, in this process. But when it was reported that this was literally their idea, then it was over with. There's no white privilege to bring into the conversation, because if anybody overlooked black coaches, it was the 2 stars on the team. And I can guarantee you, they weren't thinking, let me make sure I get a guy with some brown skin in here, make this fair so Stephen A. Smith feel good about this. I seriously doubt that that's what they're thinking in regards to putting together their team, especially given the circumstances with KD coming back from injury near the tail end of his career, and Kyrie coming off of the circumstances that he has with injuries and controversy on his team, other teams and stuff like that. He wants a sure shot coach. Do I think they hired a sure shot coach? I do not, because he's a rookie. And I think that that's risky. But if it's what they want, if this is the guy whose hands they're going to put their coaching lives in, who the hell am I to say that they shouldn't want the guy? Who am I to say, nah, they should probably hire Mark Jackson? They didn't freaking want Mike Jackson. KD and Kyrie don't want Mark Jackson. They want Steve Nash. The end. That's all I need to hear. That's all anybody should need to hear. So don't get mad at the players who don't have quote-unquote power in this situation for hiring a guy that they chose. That's because that's exactly what he did too. He blamed Kyrie and KD. Said, yeah, y'all overlooked the brother. No, they don't have that power on paper. If they have that power, it's because it was bestowed upon them by ownership. And it's rightfully so. If ownership know what they're doing, it's exactly what they should be doing. I don't think anybody did anything wrong here. I think it was risky. I think that those names who were overlooked, I don't really have a problem with them overlooking those names, with the exception of Mark Jackson, who's been blackballed out of the league, most obviously. Again, Ty Lue is getting a job in Philly, it looks like. I don't have a problem. And normally I would say, okay, Steven pointed something out, we need to change. But if there's no plan to change this circumstance doesn't look like the greatest example of it, then really we just asking people to be angry. And for me, we got enough anger pointed our direction, Steven. We don't need any more, bro. We don't. If your words aren't doing nothing but pissing off white folks, thanks, bro. We got enough of that going on. That's not what we need. My name is BDF44. I'm out.